Hi again. I just wanted to come back to you with a video to run through some of the subtler signs that your partner might be cheating on you. When I first discovered that my this current partner was cheating on me, I'd been looking at YouTube videos. And there are loads of YouTube videos out there which have got sort of some of the big headline signs of cheating, such as, oh, he or she hides his mobile phone or changes the passcode on his mobile phone, or he or she gets text messages at weird times or becomes very secretive. And um, that that particular sign and quite a few of the other signs that I was hearing about just didn't apply to me in this relationship or in previous relationships where my other halves have been cheating. And just was thinking about how it might be useful to share some of my thoughts about some of the more subtle signs. And I also wanted to bring in the idea that um, often the person who is cheating can be suffering from sort of a narcissistic personality traits, and in some cases, sort of full blown narcissistic personality disorder. And there are other types of personality, such as borderline personality disorder, that fall into that sort of category of people who are more likely to cheat. And from my experience, I was with a partner who, for 10 years, who was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And so I have had experience of this, and certainly, um, the person who is the partner of the narcissist are that we're less likely to pick up on the subtler signs of cheating. And I think that's quite an important place to start, is that, quite often we might actually realize deep down, we might know that something isn't quite right, but that we just don't trust ourselves. And often that can be because we've been living with someone or in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic. And so us, as the sort of the more empathic partner, we are less likely to believe in ourselves and more likely to believe in our partner. So when they spin us a line or spin us a lie, we quite often will believe them because we want to believe them, because we ourselves wouldn't lie to them. So it becomes very hard to believe that your partner is lying. So um, yeah, and certainly with my partner who had borderline personality disorder, the signs were actually very, very obvious, because his personality and his lifestyle and his emotions were very, very volatile. Um, the My latest partner, the signs were much, much subtler. Yes, he has narcissistic traits, but he's also highly intelligent and was very clever with it. And so, for example, that it wasn't that he was staying out overnight, sort of more frequently, because that would have been a very strong sign that something was going on. So yeah, I just thought I'd run through some of the subtler signs for you, and yeah, hopefully they'll be of some help. So the first sign really is that you are on YouTube looking at and listening to and watching videos about your partner cheating. So unless you're the kind of person who's very possessive, very jealous, etc., most people wouldn't be searching out for signs of infidelity unless they were strongly suspicious that something wasn't quite right. And as I mentioned before, it's very important that we do start to listen to our own inner sort of wisdom, if you like, with things like this, because um, people can be very clever when it comes to covering up affairs, and because they don't want to be caught, they want to continue to be in their safe, steady relationship, but they also want the thrill of the other. So yeah, so I'd say number one for the first subtle sign of cheating is that you, as the victim, are doing research and strongly suspecting that something isn't quite right. Then number two, for me, this was very much in my experience. So the sex with my partner just seemed a bit different. And again, this is kind of very much going back to, trusting in your own inner instincts, if you like. And I just felt that, sex just felt a bit different. My partner just seemed a bit distant, a little bit maybe distracted. He didn't seem to be as intimate. And the sex itself just seemed a bit less loving, for example. And I'd started to, after we made love, I just suddenly would get very upset for absolutely no reason, and just had a feeling of being used. And often I'd sort of turn over and find myself crying. And again, I couldn't actually explain it. It's not as though my partner was sort of being forceful, or that the sex itself wasn't nice. It just didn't feel right, if that makes sense. So I think that, that would be my second sign, would be, if you pay attention to your sex life. I mean, another subtle-ish sign was that our sex life was much less active. I was able to sort of put that down to the fact that he was having problems at work, but that's it can be quite a strong signal that something else is going on. So sex life is quite a big key sign. And I'd say something like, looking at your partner's lifestyle, has it changed? And this could be like a lot of little differences, for example. So they might, I don't know, just go on a diet, sort of lose weight. Suddenly, they've got a new friend that they start to go and see more often, or a new hobby. They might start to go out for drinks after work, whereas before they didn't so much. And then in terms of sort of looking at the subtler shifts, maybe they had a colleague at work, for example, that they used to talk about all the time, but then all of a sudden they stopped talking about them. So that was very much my experience recently. Was my partner had his affair with a girl that he worked with, and in the early days of our relationship, he used to talk about her quite a lot. During the affair, he absolutely didn't mention her at all, and it had kind of, I think somewhere in the back of my mind, it had registered that was happening, but it never became a fully formed sort of conscious thought. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I realised that, that was a little bit odd. And on that note, so I'd also really recommend you start to pay attention to your dreams, because often our dreams can give us very strong clues that something not quite right is going on, because our subconscious can often pick up on the signs that our conscious brain won't register at all. So I was starting to have some quite nightmarish dreams with where my partner is heterosexual, but my dreams, I started to dream that he was having sex with a man at work, and that was a very shocking dream for me, and so shocking that it woke me up. And that was actually my subconscious trying to tell me that something funny is going on here, but I totally ignored it. So yeah, just to sort of reiterate about your inner wisdom, really. And other little things like so from my examples, I can remember that he used to call me when he was driving home from work. That was quite a regular thing he used to do, and he stopped doing it. And I think it was because on those days that he was going into one particular office, that was where this girl was, and so he obviously had felt it was too difficult for him to then phone me straight after being with his affair partner. Another example I've got is we used to sometimes watch a TV program called Cheaters, and we used to watch it and just have a good old laugh and joke about it. After he started the affair, I remember it coming on the TV, and he immediately stood up and walked out. He made an excuse, I think, that he had to go and do some work or something. But again, looking back, it was obvious that he didn't want to watch that. He didn't want to be. I don't think he could cope with seeing other people doing what he was doing. And I think things like, if your partner becomes a little bit jumpy, for example. So my other half would often work quite late at night, but sometimes I'd come down and see him in the middle of the night and see how he was getting on. And often, if I came in, he would absolutely jump out of his skin, whereas this isn't something that he'd ever done ever before. He was always sort of fairly laid back. I think also, prior to him starting the affair, he was very, very anti sort of people who used to cheat. And yet during the affair, I remember him talking, he found out that a close friend of ours was cheating on his partner. And he actually started to justify it and started to sort of say, well, yes, I can understand how, you might have your head turned, if you've been in a long-term relationship. And at the time I thought, oh, that's a bit odd. You've always been sort of quite vigorously anti people who cheat, and yet, here you are defending people that do that. But again, I just ignored it. So, but yeah, that was yet another little sign. And then things like, if his female work colleague phoned him whilst he was at home, previously he would always take the phone call, and then after he started the affair, he just couldn't bring himself to speak to her whilst I was in the house with him. And I remember noticing that if she phoned, this only happened once, she phoned and he just immediately switched his phone off. And I just took it as a compliment that he wanted to spend time with me. But no, it was because he couldn't quite bring himself to talk to her whilst I was in the same room. Um, and then sort of things like if he went to this particular office, he would make an extra special effort to look nice, have a shave, put on aftershave, and sort of the rest of the time it's not that he was particularly scruffy, but he'd go the extra mile, and I just put it down to the fact that was the busiest office, and he needed to look at his best, he needed to be on his top game. But again, looking back, it's quite a subtle sign, but quite an important one. And then also, what you can find is people who are having an affair will often try and flip it onto their partner. So if they have a bit of a guilty conscience, they might try to insinuate that you are the one who's cheating. So I remember going away with a friend for a girls' holiday, and I remember him saying to me, "Oh, why are you going to all the effort of having your legs waxed? Are you trying to? Is it because you fancy all the Spanish waiters?" Which was like, it couldn't have been further from the truth, quite honestly. And then when it comes down to sort of our relationship, other than our sexual relationship, I say he had sort of stopped noticing me. So I think I'd picked up on the fact that something was wrong, and so I'd started going to quite a few exercise classes, and I'd lost a bit of weight, and I'd sort of toned myself up. And I remember asking him if he had noticed, and he was very dismissive, and he just sort of said, "Well, I see you every day, so I don't notice things like that." And I think he didn't, because he was more interested in the girl he was having an affair with. So, and then there's a couple of other things that's probably worth mentioning. Sometimes people who are having an affair, the guilt that they feel can eat them up. This isn't always true of narcissistic people, but they know, even if they're justifying it to themselves, they know deep down that what they're doing is not okay. And so it can turn people quite unpleasant. They can become really quite critical of you, even though you haven't done anything wrong. They can become not very nice to be around. And again, it's like nailing jelly. It's very hard to find the reason behind it and try to understand it and unpick it, because you don't know what's actually going on for them. But if you find your partner is, for no apparent reason, they're sort of becoming more critical of you, or they're just becoming a little bit difficult to be around, or you sort of just have this feeling that actually you don't really want to spend as much time with them as you used to, and you probably won't even be able to explain it, but that could be a big sign that actually they don't feel good about what they're doing, and or they maybe fear being caught out. They may be withdrawing from you, or finding ways to start arguments so that they can have space from you, because they perhaps worry that intimacy between the two of you may lead to you discovering that actually things aren't all quite right there. So yeah, I think that's covered off most of my sort of subtler signs that I'd say when I look back. actually a lot of them aren't so subtle, but you take each one in isolation, and you know, you wouldn't think that anything was wrong, but when you put them all together, it actually does. Hopefully you can see it does sort of paint a picture of someone who's, you know, something is going on and it's not quite right. um, and whether your partner is narcissistic or whether they're not, you know, that's kind of irrelevant. However, um, you know, having an affair is quite a narcissistic thing to do, and certainly if you're with someone who has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, or if you're with someone who you suspect is just has strongly narcissistic traits, then there is a very, very high possibility that they will not be able to stay faithful, because part of their makeup will be that they need to get the adoration and often that from others outside of the relationship, and often that will take the form of yeah, a sexual affair. So yeah, I hope that's been useful. I I will try and come back to you again with another video talking about the more obvious signs of infidelity, because I think that might be helpful, and it's not just going to be as simple as, you know, that you find a second mobile phone. There's a whole host of other signs that you can look out for. But yeah, if you've got any comments, please leave them below, and I'll answer as many as I can. And if you've got any ideas for any other videos you'd like me to make, then I'd love to hear from you. But yeah, I hope you're having a good day, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.